Welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine, and I'm the president of Democrats of Greater Tucson, and I want to send you all a blue, warm welcome to the most democratic-friendly place you'll ever find. And that's right here. It's an exciting moment as I speak. The Electoral College is up to something, but I'm going to leave that to Victoria. She has more details to share. And we have our speaker, Victoria Steele, here today. Victoria, how are you?
I am just fine. I'm better than fine. I'm actually happy. I've got some good news to tell you folks today.
Wow. Well, we just can't wait. We all need a dose of good news.
Don't we though?
I'll turn to you in just a minute and give you an introduction.
Sure.
But right now we have an announcement from Lauren McElroy, who is the one of the leaders of Save the Heart of Reed Park. There is a plan to demolish Burnham Hill and cut down all the trees in Reed Park, as well as get rid of the lovely little duck pond. And so, Lauren, I wondered if you would unmute yourself and tell us what it's all about.
Okay, I'm really grateful for you for having me here. We were just shocked when we learned I learned on November 6th. A few other people learned from a letter to the editor that appeared in the Star that was taken down a couple days later by the Star. What they're planning is to envelop that whole area around Barnum Hill and the duck pond into the zoo. And they want to put a tiger colony there, a tiger breeding colony. Basically, we were just shocked that they could think that they could just totally wreck our city's Central Park without really asking anyone. And actually, what also is very disturbing is that the city council members keep repeating that the people voted for this. So we looked up the ballot, and all it says on the ballot is that, a yes vote will have the effect of a small sales tax, which actually over time turns out to probably equal $80 to $100 million over 10 years. And that would be used for capital improvements, maintenance and operations, and free zoo admission for a few school groups. That's what we voted for. And they're saying that people voted for the zoo master plan, when in fact nobody has ever seen the zoo master plan. And so how could we have voted for it? But and the sort of the other underlying principle is that the city says they get to do whatever they want with the park. So we are doing whatever we can to preserve that. If you haven't been down to Reed Park on a Sunday afternoon lately, I highly recommend doing that, because you'll just see it's one of the things that in our city is working really, really well. We are trying to raise money for funds for a lawyer. Our hope is that we could negotiate with the city and try to save the entire park from becoming a zoo, because actually this is nearly 11 acres that if they did get this parcel, it would become nearly 11 acres that they've taken within about the last 10 years. So there's really been no principle to say you have to stop that. I'm going to wind up with just telling you, we do have a GoFundMe for legal counsel. So you go to gofundme.com and type in Save the Heart of Reed Park. I also should have said right from the beginning, someone started a petition as soon as that letter to the editor came out. It now has over 19,000 signatures. And that is mostly without the Star ever printing anything about this side of the story. It was just yesterday that Tim Steller finally, thank God, started to let the people of Tucson know what they would possibly lose. We also, our email address, if you want to get hold of us, is savereedpark@gmail.com. And we also have a very active Facebook page, which within a month has now 800 members, and people are coming up with strategies and how we can move forward to protect our park. which in some ways it just seems absurd that we should even have to do this, but it is very important. There's so few public spaces, and we just can't lose any more green space with COVID happening. The park is one of the places where people can go. I went there with my kids. We did the social distancing Thanksgiving dessert, it just really, really needed in this time for stress relief. Thank you so much, Larry.
You're welcome. And I will put the link in the chat for people to find your Facebook page.
Yeah.
I myself am a huge fan of Reed Park. I go there whenever the weather permits with my dog, and it's just a place of natural beauty, a hill with trees growing out of it and a pond where you see little kids feeding the ducks. It's the kind of thing, in my opinion, that we should be preserving. And with that, let's turn to our speaker. Hang on a second here. There we go. Victoria Steele, my favorite legislator. Democrat Victoria Steele is a member of the Arizona State Senate, representing Legislative District 9, which is the bluest legislative district in Arizona, and she's represented it for 8 years. She took office in 2012 as a member of the State House of Representatives, and now she, as of 2019, was elected and re-elected to the state Senate. She's a member of 4 legislative committees: the Ethics Committee, the Government Committee, the Health and Human Services Committee, and the Water and Agriculture Committee. She's the co-founder of the Tucson chapter of the National Organization of Women and a keynote speaker and trainer on empowering women. And she also enjoyed an award-winning career as a TV and radio broadcaster, and she has a master's level degree in mental health counseling. And with that, Victoria, tell us what you got.
I'll bet most of you didn't even know we had a Senate Ethics Committee. And it kind of is understandable. We haven't met since I've been in office. So that explains a lot, I think. Today is, I'm so happy because I get to give you some good news. This is a historic day for the Grand Canyon State. Arizona has officially cast its 11 Electoral College votes for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, making their victory a done deal. Secretary of State Katie Hobbs announced just a little more than an hour and a half ago that the votes are going to be transmitted to the required parties. The certificate will be sent to the President of the United States Senate, and it will be opened and tallied in a joint session of Congress on January 6th. Arizona had 11 electors, including for the first time 3 Native American tribal leaders, as well as our own Mayor Romero. Now, unfortunately, due to Trump supporters holding protests across the country, some electors have had concerns for their own safety. Due to credible threats of violence in Michigan, their state capital is now on lockdown as their electoral college is gathering. But here in Arizona, state officials held their vote at an undisclosed location for safety reasons. Meanwhile, protesters, some of them probably armed, I didn't watch, but some of them probably armed. If it's the same group of protesters we've seen over and over there. They have about 20 people, last time I heard, at the House today, in the mall between the House and the Senate. And they were gathering there to let people know that they were trying to find out where the electors were going to be casting their votes. So we're glad we took the precautions. And here's another reason why we're not doing this. There was an incoming Arizona State Senator, Wendy Rogers, went on Twitter today telling her followers to buy ammo shortly before the electors vote for Joe Biden. They are desperate to try to overturn the 2020 election, and we have not heard the last of them. They are using innuendo, they're using intimidation, and they are present. And because of all of that, that's why I'm doing this from my home today instead of from the Capitol, as I was expecting and hoping to be able to do. I just figured there wasn't any reason in drawing their ire. And when you're around these folks, you definitely don't feel safe. I was ambushed in the parking lot of the Senate way back in early May, when we decided to adjourn the Senate for the session because of the pandemic. And there was a man there that was in nurses' scrubs. And his name, I don't want you to promote him, but his name is Brian Mache. And M-A, well, you'll see it. We're going to show you a little video. He really was in my face. He got to several legislators as we were trying to get into our cars. He backed me basically into a corner and started yelling at me, telling me that I didn't need that mask, and refusing to move back. And he was in my face. He was wearing his nursing scrubs, and he kept holding out his badge, his nursing work badge. And so I just held up my video camera and videotaped the whole thing, because they were videotaping me. And I just thought, this is not okay. And I'm not backing down. So I took video and put it out on Facebook. And as a result, he ended up losing his job at the temp nursing company that he was working with at that time. Now we know that he is running for governor of Arizona. And he was arrested last week for forcing his way into, or let's just say, trespassing in the state house. He was with a group of armed protesters going into the house, trying to tell us that we have to overturn the election results and crying fraud. I'm getting hundreds. Last check, a couple days ago, I think it was last Thursday, I got about 700 emails from people telling me that I need to do my job, swearing at me, telling me that there's obviously fraud and I need to overturn the election. And it's been nuts. And so Larry, if you have that video, now this gentleman got out of jail and then he put it up on Facebook. He held a press conference. So again, he's now running for governor, and we have not heard the last of him. He was just arrested last week. He has had previous arrests, at least one that I know of, for domestic violence. This man is, I believe he's quite dangerous, and we're going to need to keep an eye out for him. But here he is making a campaign speech and making threats.
No, some of you already know me. I know I do see a lot of familiar faces. I see new faces. Thank you so much to the Proud Boys for being here. Thank you for answering the call that I put out on Thursday night and for showing up here. Thank you for the Oath Keepers that are here. Thank you for members of any other organizations, even the ones that I was told not to talk about and what their names were. That would be the 3%ers. That's right, I said it, Marco. Even though I was scolded, okay, by these people for telling them to come down here, despite being told, the four of us making the decision to call everyone in Arizona down here for this Saturday's meeting. So when I was 17 years old.
So we can dispense with that for the moment. He goes on to say, we've got Plan A fully in effect, and we'll try this the legal way. And if not, we've got Plan B, and you all know what Plan B is. And it seemed very pointed and not terribly veiled. It seemed threatening, but he seems to be pretty good at reaching that level of making a threat and then backing off before it crosses the line and encourages DPS to investigate. But after I put my video of my encounter with him online, I started getting calls from the Patriots telling me that he's one of us. You don't know dangerous. If you don't take that video down, you're going to know what danger is. Then I started being stalked, basically. Someone rang my doorbell and ran after dark. And that has never happened in the entire time I've lived there. And then threatening calls all day, all night, leaving voicemails, which, so at that point I had a DPS investigation going on into him and some other folks, and a Pima County Sheriff's investigation into, and they were doing drive-bys my house to protect me. And here's the thing. This kind of stuff is now happening. He was with the group that was out in front of Katie Hobbs's house, Secretary of State's house, earlier this week, or not this way, I think it was a couple weeks ago, telling her to stop stealing the vote. We have not heard the last of them even after today, so we have to be vigilant. Now, on to something that is truly huge news, the pandemic. This morning, an ICU nurse in New York City was the first in the country to receive a COVID vaccination. I'm so glad that the vaccine is now arriving in Arizona, starting today, and Arizonans with the highest priority categories of risk or need are expected to get their first doses of COVID-19 vaccine starting sometime this week. Now, they won't be risk-free. So when you get yours, you won't be risk-free for weeks afterwards. So even once you get the vaccine, you're still going to need to continue to do all those safety measures that got us through to this point. Wear your mask, isolate as much as possible, particularly if you're feeling sick. Wash your hands. It won't be until next summer or early fall before everyone who wants to be inoculated will be able to do so. State Health Director Dr. Kara Christ has laid out preliminary schedules for when those vaccines are going to be delivered to healthcare providers and to others. The first group will be to healthcare workers, home health aides, nursing assistants, medical assistants, and residents of skilled nursing facilities and assisted living centers. Second priorities are in Arizona are adults with high-risk medical conditions living in shelters or other congregate living settings, teachers, police officers, corrections officers, other emergency response workers, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, front office workers who deal with children, workers for utility companies, and then people in food industries, including those at grocery stores and restaurants, and transportation workers like those who drive trucks and buses, as well as gas station employees. And other essential workers, which the state says includes everything from financial services to funeral home employees. And then the third priority are those with medical conditions such as obesity, heart disease, chronic lung disease, and Arizonans older than 65 who, assuming you haven't fallen into one of the prior higher priority groups, you will be next in line. So I'm going to switch topics again, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for your vote. I did not have an opponent in this campaign cycle, but I campaigned anyway, so I could help my seatmates, Representatives Pamela Powers-Hanley and Dr. Randy Freese, retain their seats. I also used my campaign as an opportunity to hold what I called step-up campaigns, a virtual walk to raise money for food bank, and then another one to raise money for victims of child abuse. Many of you pitched in to walk or donate money to the tunes of thousands of dollars, and I am grateful to you for that. Now, once the legislative session came to an abrupt halt way back in May, that was due to COVID-19, I was driving home from the Capitol that day when I realized suddenly that some children are now going to be trapped at home, isolating with an abuser, and their teachers or school nurse, counselors, coaches aren't going to have eyes on them to be able to do an early intervention if they suspect abuse. So for that reason, I started this statewide task force called Stop Child Abuse Arizona. And we're coming up with ways to spot victims during this pandemic and get them to the safety if needed. Now, unfortunately, we were right to be concerned. We are now seeing a higher severity of child abuse cases, particularly in Pima County, and more of those cases of abuse are showing up in the emergency room, and they are severe. Immediately after the election was held, and I can say more about the task force if you want. We're still working on things, but I want to get into the legislature again. So immediately after the election, the Senate Democratic Caucus held elections for leadership. Senator Rebecca Rios is minority leader. Senator Lupe Contreras is assistant leader, and Senator Martin Quesada and I were elected as co-whips. We are preparing for what we expect will be an unprecedented legislative session. Nothing has been easy this year. We all know that. Here's one of the sort of rule of thoughts that I'm thinking about a lot as I am going into this session. I have worked as much as possible in a bipartisan fashion, but meeting someone halfway is futile when that halfway line has been moved and has now become a line you can't cross. Still, I will find a way to continue making progress. So given that we are still in the minority caucus, I first had to reassess every single one of the bills that I plan to introduce. Some of them I just pulled because there was no hope for them for the next couple of years. But I have come up with a good list, and I have sort of re-engineered some of the bills that I have introduced previously. My bills are still being prepared as we speak, and hopefully I'll begin introducing them officially this week. Those will include these and more. They include ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. We'll also be doing a bill that will do conforming language because we do expect the ERA to be ratified this year. It actually has been ratified. It just hasn't been published in the Constitution. So we need Arizona to ratify it now too. So I'll be doing 2 bills on the ERA this year. I'll be doing 2 bills on groundwater pumping, which is vital. One of the bills, a couple of the bills, actually I have several bills on transportation, electrification, and the building out of the electric vehicle infrastructure in Arizona. I'm very excited about these bills, and I'll tell you more about those later. Legislation to require members of the clergy to report child abuse, even if they learned of it in confidential communication. Also, child abuse prevention education in schools. Parental rights terminations in the case of a sexual assault that resulted in a pregnancy. Fertility fraud. Unfortunately, I have been in the news lately for, we had a doctor here in Tucson who has been accused of, in more than one case too, of being the father of the children that he artificially inseminated into the the family that came for his assistance. That's really, really sad. So I'm working on that bill. The language is a little tricky. It will include both civil and legal remedies, I think. Anyway, so we're still working on that one. So I'm going to have more on these, but until they're actually introduced, I don't want to talk about any of them in detail. So what you can do is I encourage you to sign up for my Steele Report newsletter. I'm going to be starting to send those out again weekly very soon. So if you want, and you haven't gotten those emails, they will come out weekly starting soon, and you can go on to my website. If you go into the chat, you'll see I put, it's the very first thing in today's chat room. So if you go into the chat box and go to the beginning, you'll see the link to my website, which I will keep updated with constant reports and constant videos of what's happening at the legislature and the bills that I'm working on. You can also go directly to the sign-up page for the Steele Report, and that email address is in there as well. I've also included my office phone number and my office email address, so I can hear from somebody other than people telling me to overturn the vote. So thank you. I hope that you have questions. I'm prepared.
We do have a question I received in advance. If you would like to ask a question, go into the participants box and you'll see a place there where you can raise your little blue hand, and you can ask a question live. Or if you prefer, I'll ask the question for you. Just put it in the chat. And let me start with a question from our member, John Yoakum. John says, first, thank you for bringing back the local NOW chapter. Mm-hmm. My wife has been a part of the local NOW since the beginning of the 70s and sat on the National NOW board. He would like to know, how many members are there today in NOW, and after we pass the ERA, what are the major priorities for women in Arizona?
So one of the things that I did, and thank you, John, I love this question, and I always want to hold up the legacy of Claudia Elquist. She was amazing. She helped me start up the NOW chapter in Tucson. It is thriving. I am now on the national board myself, following in Claudia's footsteps, and we have been hard at work. We have been focusing mainly on the ERA recently, as well as violence against women, another issue that is near and dear to my heart. The ERA was ratified by the 38th state, which was Virginia, last February. And it was, I know, you can clap. It was supposed to have been immediately published into the US Constitution by the archivist. But this archivist, in a non-discretionary role, decided that he wasn't comfortable doing it, so he didn't do it. And he got some pressure somewhere. So women in this country are still not considered equal to men. We still do not have equality. And how many years have we been fighting for this? So one of the things we're doing is asking for President-elect Joe Biden to, within the first few days of his new administration, to direct the archivist to publish the 28th Amendment, and let's get on with it. So with regard to that, that's why once that happens, we need to take the wording in Arizona statutes and have them conform to federal law. So that's why I'm doing two bills at the same time. One is to have Arizona ratify the ERA, because we don't want to be on that short list of states that don't consider women equal. Just like I believe Mississippi was the very last state in the union to ratify the vote for women. And I think it was in the 80s that they finally did it. That's shameful, and we don't want that to be happening. So that's where we are on that. And we really want Arizona to do that because it's important that the leaders here show we care about women, we care about girls, we consider you equal. I think it's a win-win for everyone, and it's not a Democrat-Republican thing. It's truly not. This is a human rights thing, and I think it's an important thing. And we need to bring our legislation up to snuff, our statutes. So not our legislation, but our statutes. So we're working on that now. And let's see what else. Okay, I think I answered the question more than enough at this point, and I'm happy to answer questions.
All right. Well, we have lots of questions for you. Barbara Warren, your hand is up. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. As we all are acutely aware, it's been hotter and drier, but hotter than ever every summer and through the year. Our temperatures continue to rise as we try to address climate change more effectively. And one of the greatest risks are heat deaths, not just in people crossing the desert, but in our own communities, workers. So my question is whether or not you're willing to support and bring forward a piece of legislation that would provide standards for the state of Arizona to have in place for all employers to protect outdoor workers as well as workers who work in unair-conditioned environments through various measures that need to be taken by the employers. Education about heat illness protection measures, just things like break waters and a lot of other things. And these are in the state statutes of California, Washington State, and a number of other states, but we have nothing like that here. Is that something you can support?
That is something I do support. And I believe somebody might already be working on that. I don't want to speak out of term. I requested to be on the Natural Resources, Energy and Water Committee for these very reasons. I think climate change is the most important issue that we have going in Arizona, right up there along with the other crisis of the pandemic. So we have these two competing interests. One of the other things, and I agree with you, heat is a critical issue in Arizona. We are looking. There was an article in, I believe, the New York Times not too long ago on measures that are being taken in the Phoenix area, everything from even using different materials in their roads to make them lighter and less reflective of heat. So there's tons of different things, but what I'd like to do is request that you send me a copy of that legislation, and I will look it over. And if somebody isn't already doing that here in the legislature this year, then I will get to work on doing that myself.
Raul Grijalva has a bill in Congress. Kamala Harris has introduced it into the Senate, and then there's a number of state initiatives. I'll send you all of those as models.
And it's wonderful to see you again. One of the things when it comes to climate change, one of the biggest sources of carbon pollution, if you will, and that are contributing, that is contributing to our climate emergency and our drought is the transportation sector. As long as we keep spewing all of that into the atmosphere, one of the best ways to address that, to tackle that, is to electrify vehicles. And so we can start doing that. But we need to have an infrastructure on having charging stations readily available. We need to have our renewable energy standards changed, and looks like we may be on our way to doing that, but I'm not holding my breath. Also, we have we need to have new homes built so that they are EV ready. They have charging stations available in the homes, the plug that will take a car battery and that we'll be able to do. And we need to extend that to apartment complexes. There are a lot of things that we can do. We also can have rebates. I'm proposing a pilot program for rebates for homeowners that have to retrofit their homes so that they can have those special plugs put in so that you can readily, quickly charge up your vehicle. And we need to have them in more workspaces. This is a huge economic boon to Arizona. So if you're concerned about the economy, and I got to tell you, I really am, this is something that is going to create new jobs. It's going to clean out our atmosphere, clean up the air, and it will also reduce the health care costs that come as a result of carbon pollution. So this is an area that is one of that and water are my key focuses this year. I'm so happy to be on this committee, and I'm happy to work with you, Barbara.
All right, thanks. We have a question from our loyal member, Lucy Messing. Lucy, go ahead.
Hi, Victoria. Well, you know, I always get nervous when the legislature is going into session when it's controlled by the Republicans. So, what
tried? We all tried.
But can you tell me what maybe a couple of things that we really need to be looking out for this year? I'm always worried on attacks of initiatives or something like that. But if you can share anything you might have heard that we really need to be paying attention to. Thank you.
I think it's pretty darn clear they're going to attack our election laws, and they will be also looking to see what they can do to monkey around with the citizen initiatives, such as the Red for Ed initiative and all of those. So what I expect is they are going to be I'm pausing because it's going to be tough. It is going to be tougher than I've ever seen it. And I don't want to say words that incite fear or anger, but we're dealing with a whole new group of people. The people that we're looking at in the Republicans in both chambers are a lot of the new ones coming in. They're refusing to wear masks. They're, they invited Giuliani into the Capitol building. They spent 11 hours with him in a hotel room and the Hyatt, and it was like, oh my God. And then he gets COVID, and now several of them have COVID. And so they don't want to pay for public education. They don't. They're going to do anything in their power to change that. They're going to change the initiative process if they can. We have our hands full. We really do. It's going to be across the board challenging. And, last night, Lucy, I went over to my mom and dad's, and my dad is really, really worried. He's worried. He's worried about me going up to the legislature. And he, in essence, begged me not to go back there. And that's hard, because it's a scary place right now. It just is. So he and mom, because of COVID, they don't have COVID, but because of the pandemic, they are doing a really good job at staying home. They don't want to. It's hard on them. And so all day long, they watch the news on cable TV. So they're watching MSNBC and the local news and the national news and, ABC and CBS, NBC, all of those stations. And then if they're not watching that, then they're reading the newspaper. And I said, Dad, how much of this are you doing? And he said, all the time. That's why I'm scared. And I said, you got to realize that bad news is what sells newspapers. Bad news is what gets on to that 24-hour news cycle on cable. So if you're listening to it all day long, you are only getting the bad news in the world. So we stopped the newspaper. It's not coming to them anymore. And I found the Turner Classics movie channel and Home and Garden TV. I said, Dad, here, look at these. You will love this stuff. Look at here, this environmental channel, I forget what it's called, and watch those. And then I called up my siblings and I said, you got to start calling Mom and Dad every day. Tell them about the great-grandchildren. You gotta love on them. You gotta just remind them that there's more in life than what we're seeing in the news. And I would say that to all of you. And it's so hard because I'm an addict for the news. I just am. It's hard. But then every once in a while, I have to turn it off and go on a hike, decorate a Christmas tree, do something, anything to stop looking at this little thing. This is my appendage. So, yeah, Lucy, we're in for a tough cycle. So we have to hunker down, and we have to persevere. We will persevere. We will go forth and hold true to our democratic values. And we all know what those are.
Well, Victoria, speaking for myself, we need you in the legislature. We need you in Phoenix. And if you need a ride and a bodyguard up to the state legislature, I'm happy to drive you and come with a baseball bat. And I'm sure I can round up a posse of a bunch of other old men, and we'll have your back.
Well, thank you. I got a call from a doctor who in Phoenix who is a Democrat, and he said, there are a lot of us up here who have guns, and we're Democrats, and we'll guard you and walk you in. We'll escort you into the building. I was just like, oh my God, that's so scary to me. No. We're not doing that. We do have DPS, and although they weren't responsive when I was ambushed in the parking lot, I can call them for an escort. So when I know that I'm heading in, I'll be safe. I will be safe. And
well, we certainly hope so.
Thank
We've
you.
got a great question coming up from Steve Early, member of our board. Steve, go right
Steve.
ahead.
Hi, Victoria. Thank you so much for coming and visiting. Anyway, I think that I've contacted Aunt Pat Kirkpatrick this morning, asking her to start censoring paperwork against Andy Briggs and Debbie Lasko for trying to subvert the will of the Arizona people.
Yeah.
And that was really bad.
Right.
And they need to pay a price for it. And I don't know if there's anything the Senate can do about it. But
That is sedition. They were advocating for the end of our democracy.
I agree.
That absolutely, they need to be censured. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I totally agree with you.
All right. Tony Zinman, you're up next. Please unmute yourself. Tony's also a member of our board. Go right ahead, Tony.
Hi, Victoria. Can all hear me?
Hey, Tony.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, very good. I was hoping you could address a couple of issues that may be coming your way. First of all, of course, we had a sea change here in Arizona with marijuana becoming legal, but a couple of residual things that weren't fixed by that. I've worked as a juvenile public defender, and if my clients sell a vape pen to another student, they're looking at a class 3 felony still that they can't do anything about on the record until they're 25. Now that marijuana, the first 2 times they're found for possession when they're juveniles is civil, or and it's a misdemeanor the 3rd time. It seems kind of like it seems like if somebody sells somebody a bottle of alcohol, I don't think it's a class 3 felony. Now that marijuana is being treated the same way, is there going to be anything to kind of fix some of those harsh penalties for sales? And I'd also like you to address if you see any action coming on gun violence prevention this year.
Because it is a citizens initiative, I fully expect that the legislature cannot change it. The way that the law is, they cannot make any changes, no matter what, unless it furthers the intent of the law. So I'm sure that it was not perfect, and that there are places it needs to be shored up. So if those can be presented in a way that furthers the intent of the legislation, then perhaps those changes can be made. I know there are a lot of people who want to get in there and make changes, some for the better, some not so much. So we'll see. As far as gun legislation, did you notice that the Republicans just got the majority again? Yeah. I'm not saying let's give up. I think that this is a matter of life and death. We have to. We're losing so many people daily. What are the numbers, Tony? You know better than me. What are the numbers of the people who die from gun violence every day or every year? Is it like 40,000?
Yeah, I don't have it offhand exactly, but it's a lot.
It is a lot. It's like 40,000. It's just like, seriously, this is a public health issue. It's not a political issue, and it's something that we should be dealing with as public health policy. And particularly one of my favorite pieces of legislation that I've put in, I think, a couple of times over the years, was to have if somebody has a gun, a loaded weapon in the home, and children would have access to it, and a child gets that gun and harms themselves or somebody else, that the gun owner would be held liable, criminally liable. And I think that is a good piece of legislation. It's been supported year after year by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So that's one of my favorites. I know Dr. Randy Fries has been really supportive of that one as well.
All right, we have a question from Steve Linder. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Steve is our treasurer.
Hey, Steve.
Hi. Living on the Northwest side in past times, this area was represented by Republicans that were reasonable people. Tony Helen, Pete Hirschberger, those people you could talk to and deal with. I am so happy and honored that you are my senator now and living in 9. So that's thrilling for me. But are those type of people in the legislature now? Are there any people in the Republican side that you can peel off to possibly stop some of the craziness that's going to be coming forward? Or are they all insane and it just, they should be in straitjackets?
There were 2, possibly 3 moderate Republicans that we were able to work with on certain issues two of them are gone, and one of them we nearly defeated, and the Democrats spent about $1.5 million to try to defeat him so we could take the majority. And I don't think Paul Boyer is going to be supportive of anything we bring to him now. I am willing to work behind the scenes with him to see what changes we can make. But those two people that, I mean, we have Kelly Townsend coming over from the House. And if you know Representative Kelly Townsend, the anti-vaxxer stuff, yeah, and Michelle Ugenti Rita is more bent than ever on changing our election laws, making it harder to vote, making it harder for Democrats and people of color to vote. And young people, college students, they don't want you to vote. They just don't want you to vote. Now we also have the person who replaced, I think Heather Carter, is Wendy Rogers. And I'm just going to say, no, she replaced not not Heather Carter. She replaced, was it Heather? Or she replaced Shirley or Sylvia Allen? Anyway, I thought Sylvia Allen was really, way to the right. Wendy Rogers makes Sylvia Allen look like a liberal. We got our work cut out for us.
Hear from Shirley Money. Gosh, this is hard to see. She wants to know, who do you see running for governor in 2022? I myself have heard that Secretary of State Katie Hobbs might run. What's the word on the street that you've heard?
And somebody just said Nancy Bartow defeated Heather Carter. That's right. So I think Wendy Rogers defeated Sylvia Allen, if I'm not mistaken. So you just asked about, I'm sorry, what was it again?
Asking about who do you think is going to run for governor
Okay.
among the Democrats and the Republicans, and word is down here that it's Katie Hobbs is going to be the Democratic candidate.
I want to wait and see who steps up. I think there are several excellent options, and I would be supportive of Katie, but I want to wait and see who all steps up. I do believe that it is Governor Ducey's intent to run for president. He was just elected president of the GOP Governors Association, and who didn't see that coming? So the way that he's handled this pandemic and his refusal to stand up and do whatever's necessary to protect the people of Arizona. This pandemic did not have to get this bad. We are now the leading state in positivity rates of COVID, and that did not have to happen. We could have put mitigation measures into effect early on and enforced them. Now we're looking at the possibility of sitting in committees for hours after hours with people that aren't wearing masks. And they're not even coming up with rules for the House. They came up with some suggestions that they already clearly said publicly, those are just, those are for the employees. We're not employees. We're elected officials. We can do what we want. So, yeah.
All right. And one last question, and that is, there appears to be a civil war inside the Republican Party with right-wingers like Fincham and others attacking the governor, and the governor responding back and getting Scarpinato to send out nasty grams. How do you see that playing out?
Pass me the popcorn. I'm watching a bonfire, and I don't have any idea how it will play out, but they seem to be eating their own these days. So we'll see. I mean, there was this Million MAGA march in DC. You know, they had a GOP stab-a-thon. Several people were stabbed over the weekend at that. And then there's somebody making a speech saying that the GOP he started the crowd of Republicans chanting, destroy the GOP, and telling them not to vote for the Republican candidates for Senate in Georgia. I'm like, okay, yeah, pass me the popcorn because I'm just going to sit and watch this one. There's nothing I can do on that. No, give me a piece of legislation and I'll go to it. But my crystal ball doesn't work all that well. I thought we were surely going to have the majority in the House and the Senate this election, and that didn't turn out the way that I expected it to. So, yeah, I'm not even looking at my crystal ball anymore. I'm just going to do the work in front of me and have goals that are focused. And that's why I carefully put together the list of legislation that I'm working on. Then you'll see it mostly focuses on environmental issues and then protection of vulnerable populations.
All right, and our one closing comment is from Sandy Binion.
I just want to remind everybody that DGT traditionally takes the last 2 weeks of December off. So we will not be having a speaker for the next 2 weeks. And to please join us again in January. And the first Monday in January is the 4th. And our speaker then will be Nikki Lee, Councilwoman, Tucson Councilwoman from the Southeast side. And we hope to see all of you then. Thank you.
And I am so honored that I was your final speaker of the year. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, Sandy.
Yes, well, you kind of asked for that too. Yeah.
All right, we have a quick one last question. Christina Early would like to comment on the Reed Park issue that was brought up earlier. Go ahead, Christina.
Hi, everybody. Just real quick, I just wanted to mention something about the Reed Park expansion and the thought that the park was being destroyed because the pond was being taken out. The Reed Park master plan has been in place for several years. We didn't get the, several years ago, we tried to get the half-cent sales tax and it didn't go through. So they weren't able to expand like they wanted to at that point. Then we did get the half-cent sales tax, or I'm not sure I'm saying that right. It may be 0.1 cent sales tax, whatever that the zoo has been able to get. And so the plans for the pond to be taken into account for the zoo has been in the works for quite a while that I know of, and what I've learned of as being a member of the zoo. Also, the zoo has to hit certain requirements for the accreditation that it has, and one of the things that it needs is a bigger place for the tigers and some of their other animals. I mean, this is for the sake of the animals also to have the bigger and better habitat. And I know Lauren's holding her hand up, and so this is a conversation I'm sure that we can have several times around. But the biggest thing I want to say is that living in a city the size of Tucson, things are going to change. Changing the zoo, making the zoo better for the animals, and the pond and where the hill is, there is a big place where people like to go and feed the ducks. The problem being is that they feed the ducks bread, which is not proper food for ducks. the bread gets in the water and it messes up the water and they have to drain it. And I know you've all have gone to the Reed Park Zoo and wondered why the pond was drained. And that's because the bread that people feed the ducks has messed up the pumping for the hill. They're not taking away the northern pond. From what I understand, that they're going to try to make that a nice oasis as well. A lot of the ducks that hang out in the southern pond also hang out in the zoo itself because there's a lot of water there. And so the bottom line is things are going to change, and nobody said, oh my gosh, those people like that pond and like the ducks, let's go in and destroy it. That's not what the zoo's trying to do. They're trying to make the zoo better for their accreditation, as well as for the sake of the animals. And the city is so good about keeping its parks up, and maybe they could start thinking about taking some of that land at the golf courses instead of use that land and let the golf course be a little smaller. Maybe that would work. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. That's what we are here at Democrats of Greater Tucson. It's a chance where you can express your opinion. And with that, Victoria, we're out of time. Would you be so kind as to wrap up today's meeting, and I'll put up some of those other screens you were interested in.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for jumping on this call today. It is wonderful. I have no idea how many people are here, but I've seen a few of your faces, and I love your questions. And I am very excited to go back. Yes, it's challenging, but I love this work. And we can make change. We can make progress. I don't want you to lose hope. I do want you to watch less news and do more things that give you pleasure in life, that are fun, that things with family, things out in nature where you can be safe. Again, mask up, stay safe, and we want to see you back here with us in January.
All right. Thank you very much, Victoria. It was a pleasure to have you at the meeting. I look forward to the next time I see you. And I want to remind all of the board members of Democrats of Greater Tucson to stay on the call. We're having a board meeting right here immediately following the meeting. And for everyone else, please hang up, and it was terrific to see you. Thanks again.